Once upon a time, there was an English teacher called Stephen King, who later became known as the Stephen King. In 1972, the first 3 pages of his story Carrie were complete. However, feeling uninspired by his progress, he tossed his work into the garbage. Fortunately, Stephen King is married to Tabitha King, who later became known as novelist Tabitha King. Impressed by the pages she'd fished out of the bin, she encouraged her husband to finish the story. After dozens of rejections, Doubleday finally published the novel. Yay! Carrie is saved! No. The hardback only sold 13,000 copies. However, when Signet published the paperback version in 1975, the novel went on to sell over 1 million copies in its first year. He'd become the Stephen King. I told you it was coming, didn't I? A writer, a teacher, a small American town with a dark secret. Yep, it's Stephen King. It's 1975, and this is Salem's Lot. One night over supper, King wondered how Dracula might fare if he arrived in 20th century New York. His wife Tabitha said he'd probably be run over by a yellow cab on Park Avenue and killed. They agreed the setting should be a small rural town instead. King initially planned to call the novel Second Coming, but Tabitha suggested it sounded like a bad sex story. The publishers shortened the title from Jerusalem's Lot to Salem's Lot to avoid religious connotations. Jerusalem's Lot is a short story from Night Shift and acts as a prequel to Salem's Lot. In Dance Macabre, King said the inspiration for the book came from a dream he had when he was 8. I saw the body of a hanged man. The face was rotten and bird-pecked, but obviously my own. He used the image as a critical point in the book. In a 1987 interview, King said, "In a way, it's my favorite story, mostly because of what it says about small towns. I have a special cold spot in my heart for it." On October 30th, 1974, Stephen King and his wife Tabitha checked into room 217 of the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. The staff were preparing to close for the winter season, and the Kings were the only guests. That night, they ate dinner in the grand dining room, totally alone. Around them, chairs were propped up on the tables and taped orchestral music echoed through the vast room. Tabitha turned in early, but Stephen took a walk. Roaming the long corridors alone, he imagined a man tasked with caring for the hotel during winter. Like Stephen King at the time, Jack Torrance would be a hopeless alcoholic, allowing the author to explore his fears of alcoholism and family disintegration. Stephen ended up at the bar, being served drinks by Grady, the bartender. During the night, he dreamed of his 3-year-old son running through the corridors, eyes wide and screaming. Published on January 28, 1977, The Shining became King's first hardcover bestseller. He later claimed, "I had written The Shining about myself, a kind of psychoanalysis." Okay, a controversial one. It's Rage, the 4th book by Stephen King. It's the first book published under his pseudonym Richard Bachman, yet it's also the first of his books to be out of print. But why? He started writing the book when he was 18, inspired by harrowing high school experiences. The story became too gruesome, so he placed it in a box and wouldn't finish it for another 4 years. The book follows a troubled teen with a Catcher in the Rye kind of vibe, who, after an altercation with the school principal, murders his algebra teacher and takes the class hostage. 10 years after publication, a series of school shootings began in which the shooter owned the novel and closely related to its protagonist. When Michael Carneal opened fire on his prayer group in 1997, investigators scrambled for a motive. Despite living with schizophrenia and suffering endless bullying, the copy of Rage found in Carneal's locker took the blame. Stephen King asked his publisher to pull the damn thing out of print. Rage appeared in the Bachman books for a while, but these days it can only be found turning to dust on the second-hand market. The Stand takes its name from Bruce Springsteen's Jungleland lyrics, but Stephen King's inspiration for the novel came from a concoction of 5 divergent influences. 1. On his website, Stephen King talks of having the ambition to write an epic fantasy like The Lord of the Rings. In The Stand, his hobbit was a Texan named Stu Redman, Sauron became a supernatural madman named Randall Flagg, and Mordor was replaced by Las Vegas. 2. A 60-minute segment on chemical weapons reminded King of a chemical spill in Utah. The accident killed a large number of sheep. The reporter said, if the winds had been blowing the other way, there was Salt Lake City. 3. The 1974 kidnapping and brainwashing of the publishing heiress, Patty Hearst, by the Symbionese Liberation Army and its leader Donald DeFreeze. King kept a blurred FBI photograph of DeFreeze from the bank robbery. The image inspired King to write the foundation for the novel. We started with music, so let's finish with it. 4. King has also said the Blue Oyster Cult's Don't Fear the Reaper helped inspire the book. And 5. The Superflu, Captain Trips, is an homage to the Grateful Dead frontman Jerry Garcia. Stephen King wrote about the Stand's superflu Captain Trips in 1969. It appeared in his science fiction story Night Surf, published by the University of Maine in their literary journal Hubris. He would later rework and publish the story for the compilation Night Shift in 1978. King also credits the influence of George R. Stewart's novel Earth Abides as an influence for The Stand. Stewart's novel also follows humanity's last survivors after a pandemic kills most of the Earth's population. Stephen King said that when he wrote The Stand, he felt societal and political changes were reshaping the America he knew. The America I had grown up in seemed to be crumbling beneath my feet. Using Captain Trips as the instigator, Stephen King wrote about the collapse of his childhood America and explored the cultural shifts which emerged. In itself, The Stand made a cultural impact, and when COVID became official on March 11, 2020, which Stephen King fans amongst us didn't look to our bookshelves in trepidation.